Oh, he touched me. Oh, he touched me. And no, he touched me. Made me whole. Now looks the same down from the train. Me is my mama and my papa. The road I look, and there runs Mary, lips, golden lips like cherries. It's good. The green, green grass of home. Now all them to see me. It's good to touch the green, green grass of home. My house looks the same, paint and dry. Oh, I used to swing on. Oh, my sweet Mary, hair of gold and lips like cherries. It's good to touch the green, green grass of home. They'll all come to see me, arms reaching, smiling sweetly, to touch the green, green grass of home. And I awake and look around me. 4 gray walls surround me. That I was only dreaming. Green, green grass of home. All come to greet me. Green grass of home. The impossible fire. All right. trying to listen to Elvis, but I don't know the songs. I know one of them, but let's get going. Let's get going. Wow. Towns Van Zandt would be 80 years old today. That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. All right, everybody. It's freezing cold in DC. It's really cold. So I'm inside, and I thought I'd go live with you on Railtown. And I think what we have to do is just accept, and it's on me, it's not on you, just accept that this trade or this investment for 2025 didn't work. And I just laughed a little bit. I take it seriously, but it's not that I didn't think it was going to work in 25. And there's 2 weeks left, so there's still hope for strong improvement. But I think we just have to radically, that's a term I've heard over the last month or so. I think it has currency now. But we have to be willing to radically accept, it didn't work. And so we have to make, for that period of time, it didn't work for that period of time. But we have to decide what we're going to do. And I submit to you, we have to make a plan. And we have to adjust our time frame somewhat and act on it. And then not be discouraged. It's just time to switch our attitude and accept that, darn it, it took longer than I thought. Don't put it on yourself, put it on me. But on the other hand, the reason it took longer is all to do with again, in my opinion, a vastly improved situation, which will lead to more revenues, but there's some certainty of revenues too. I mean, nothing's certain, but in the context of a speculative area, there's some certainty. And that's a great trade-off. So I think we should be thankful we've built our position. It's 16,560,000 shares. That's you did it. And I haven't written everything down. And of course, who knows? There might be some overlap with other numbers we hear, and that might. But anyway, that's a big position. And the good news is it's a great position. It's still a great story. It's still a great investment. And when this works, and hopefully the majority hangs on, you are going to be in a position that you're not used to, which is collectively, and it doesn't just have to be me, by the way, we can start building for the next 5-10 year cycle, and it's about improving our position, but it's also going to be a lot about protecting our standing as the great vicissitude ahead comes crashing into our markets at some point. I think it's down the road, but not everybody agrees with that. and nobody knows for sure. So anyway, I think you're in a wonderful position with Railtown, and unlike anybody else, unlike the doubters, unlike the fearful, unlike the ones that are just sick of it, and there's probably some of that, unlike the people in Canada who, for whatever reason or whatever the situation is, they are either, maybe they signed something or they're presumed to be insiders. We can debate. There's the argument that I don't know if it's really much of an argument, but there's the proposition put forward that if the news were so good and this was so great, people would be violating the law and they'd be front running the news. They'd be front running. Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think the computerized sellers would do that. And because the easy path is downward. And I don't think these, of course, we don't know who they are, but the majority of the buyers over the last 2 or 3 years in Railtown are Canadian tech investors, Canadian tech CEOs and officers and board members of companies, Canadian bankers, Canadian venture. You know, it's likely that the people who have accumulated positions are of a good standing in Canada. And they're not, certainly if they sign something, but if they are close to the story, can be assumed to know something, privileged, they're not going to take the risk of losing their stature, their job, their directorships, maybe even their portfolio. And I think it's quite cynical to wonder, well, if everything's so great at Railtown, why aren't people breaking the law and front running the stock? The fact that it occurs in the hotbed of Wall Street corruption in New York City and elsewhere, it's human nature, I suppose. But there's plenty of other ways to make money and plenty of reasons not to run the risk of losing your franchise, losing your money, losing your home, losing your freedom, just to gain $1 or $2 on an investment out of greed. I don't think that's happening. And I don't think that's a fair test of why isn't the stock up. So I'd put that out of your thinking as you're doubting. But it's the flip side of it is, what happens when those buyers can buy? What happens when the people who know the story are educated on it, but also understand Canadian AI and the whole sovereignty campaign, and understand, you can debate that, but I believe it's true that there's a revolution going on in software, in AI. Possibly quantum computing is a distinct description, but this power of speed and data and memory is going to change as long as it's secure anyway, it's going to change all of our lives. It already has. I mean, just look back to, I mean, I can remember it. I can remember a time before fax machines. I certainly remember a time when I came back from London and everybody in London had cell phones. Here it wasn't as, it was a lot of people, but not everyone. But text messaging came, the the talking with the, you know, the things in your ear. It's, we didn't have any of that. We didn't have any of that. I used to get away from my desk. I had to get a beeper, and then I had to find a payphone. I wasn't much for vacations when I was working in a office. Actually, I've never been much for vacations. But I remember one time, someplace off the coast of Africa, getting a phone call from a client, beeper, and I had to get back to her. And on that island, there was one phone, one pay phone I found, and I did dump money into it. Didn't have those cards. At least I don't remember them. Maybe I was able to use a credit card. I can't remember, but I in my brain I remember just dumping coins in, and that's how. And that wasn't that long ago. That was probably I don't know, 30 years ago. And in that time frame, computers have changed, memory has changed. Just signing into your computer, downloading, you know, watching a movie. It's nearly instant now. Just to download a relatively weak document used to take you through the World Wide Web. It's all changed. And it's continuing to change. And who knows what happens later. But, you know, whether you believe there's a revolution caused by this huge new data capacity, these large language models and the agentic AI frameworks and tools, I think it's happening. Whether or not you do, Canada is dedicating its government resources, its university resources, its think tank resources, its telecom resources, and its business resources toward creating this new revolution in Canada. And they're not the only ones. It's happening in China, the Middle East, South Korea. United States, we do it in our stumble bum way because it's far more important. There's other agendas far more important to organize the vote around. But we'll get there, and we're leading, but we'll get there. So I don't think it, in terms of our investment, it may or may not really matter what happens over the next 10 or 15 years with AI. It may just matter what happens in the context of Canada for our return. But anyway, I'm going to go through, I want to simplify what we're looking for, but I also want to go through some concepts because, you know, the people who want to FUD you out of this position, and we've all gone through the recent stress, but they want you to question the thesis. They try to do it because I'm a nut job, but they also try to do it because the stock price is down. It's just like all the others, all these things that, and that's all, that's fine. We've been through that storm. But I think what we need to do to have some confidence and peace of mind is to have a plan to shift our time frame. Doesn't mean things can't happen very quickly, but just for our sanity, shift our time frame and accept that Railtown, at least in price action, was a dud in 2025. But it didn't expire. It wasn't like buying calls on finger motion when it was $5.50. And as it goes down, your calls expire worthless. By the way, I'm not talking about Finger right. I heard that something good is going on at Finger. I have no idea. If you want to go there, go on Twitter and listen to that. I mean, I was thinking about it. It's possible that situ contract. Remember, they raised $5 million a year ago for that. Maybe those revenues are going to start coming in. I don't know. I'm out of touch with that story. But my point is, when you're chasing with call options, you're helping the momentum players and the promoters make money. But it's possible it could run. But they expire if you're wrong. In the case of Railtown stock, I would argue, not you, I would say I have been wrong. You can blame it on me. I have been wrong about Railtown in 2025. But guess what? Our options didn't expire. Our position hasn't expired. And I think there were at least two concerns which could have made the whole situation fatal. Maybe three concerns. One is, are they going to be able to close the AIP acquisition, and will they have to issue a whole lot more dilution to do so? The other second one would be, since it's taken so long, has their so-called their first to market, their technology lead, their best-in-class status been compromised, and has someone else beaten them to it? Just the rapid acceleration of technology once it gets going has Railtown somehow delayed herself out of success. And going along with that is the capital markets. Has the company missed its window in terms of this wall of capital and the acquisitions of these companies, the value creation chain? So, and then the third one is, will the company, because of the delays and perhaps, we don't know for sure, but perhaps delays in revenues, will the company take a toxic financing? Because remember, that's the game. And whether the participants at various brokerage firms or law firms or elsewhere know it or not, that's the way the whole sting operation is set up. The company has to foretell or tell beforehand everything it's going to do, has to announce everything. So it sets up the gears of this enormous industrial scale theft in the North American markets. And part of it, is to weaken the cap table, expand the cap table, destroy the price. And when the companies go for financing, It's a joke, and they don't really work. Nobody makes any phone calls. You just hand the deal over to the toad or someone like that, and the destruction begins. And you know all those stories. Everything from Northwest Bio to DDBM to fill in the blanks. Yet you're susceptible to them, as I am in the heat of it. You listen to people you trust. They're a whale. They must know something, and you get caught up. Some of you have access to some of these whales that are supposedly in Railtown and hear things, but they don't. Their judgment. I mean, one of the things I have heard more than once is that the guys at AIP are really great. They really are something, and the people at Railtown are a bunch of stumble bums. I don't think that's accurate at all. In fact, in many ways, it's back assward. The two stellar people, and there's many stellar people at AIP, but the two standouts are Mike Norbrega, who was president and CEO of OMERS, the Ontario Municipal Employee Retirement System, for a decade. It might have been 8 years or 9 years. And then John Ruffalo, who worked at OMERS, and then within OMERS founded OMERS Venture Fund. And then John left and started Mavericks. He raised money for Mavericks 1 and Mavericks 2 this year. He did Mavericks 2. These two gentlemen were the original investors, the prime movers, or almost prime, in Constellation Software. At I don't know what the valuation was, but they put up the 25 million when the company went public, or the majority of it. And I don't know what the valuation was, 50 million, 100 million. It was, I think, less than $1 a share, but just say it was less than $10 a share. I've looked it up. It's hard to read on the charts. And I don't remember if I saw the IPO price as I'm talking to you. But that Constellation Software had a simple strategy. Acquire these small niche software companies with vertical market penetration, acquire them at a discount, bring them up to sort of a parent company, consolidate them, provide capital, know-how, and other ways of I hate the word, of synergy to these smaller companies, and leave the management in place, leave the incentives in place at the small the acquired company level, and just revenue share. And they grew Constellation Software in about a decade to 15 years. I think the IPO was 2006, but it took a little while to implement the plan. But the stock went to $5,000 a share. And these are the guys that brought in OMERS and brought in investors and were there when it happened. Those guys are incredible in the financial markets. And those were the founders of AIP. Fantastic. But you know what? Those two guys are on the advisory board to my memory, it's just the advisory board of Railtown. How do we know that? It's in the presentation. But they're not, I guess I don't know that for sure. But I do not think they have an operational role in AIP. Maybe Mike does, but I'm pretty sure that John Ruffalo doesn't. I mean, they're going to be active in advice at Railtown level. So who's going to run AIP? Probably, I'm going to guess, Dr. Tom Core. You know, a very talented, exceptional man in his own right. But if the judgment is that AIP is so much better than Railtown, who was in charge of AIP when they were organizing the vote to be bought out? Who hired anyway, let's not go back on all that, the bureaucracy and the attorneys. The guy running it was Dr. Tom Core, and I think he's great. Never met him, but he's an academic. He's a think tank guy. Doesn't mean he's not smart. Doesn't mean he's not, and he did a great interview that we all listened to and we can listen to again. But the idea that AIP is so much better than Railtown, I think, is misplaced. I think they're both great, but I think it's Railtown where the technology is and the genius lies. Although I think the founders of AIP certainly could be called genius. Yeah, here's Dr. Tom Core. He's former president and CEO of the Ontario Centers of Excellence. And then he was CEO of the Accelerator Center, which is great experience, at the Waterloo Research and Technology Park. And so he becomes a board member of Railtown, and he's an AIP founder. Pat Horgan becomes a board member of Railtown. He's the guy from IBM. And I would guess he has a lot of experience implementing software solutions. So the board is Corey Brandolini, Marwan Haddad, and Dr. Elliot Hotham. Those three founded, they are all co-founders anyway, of Railtown. And then also on the board is Dr. Tom Core and Pat Horgan. So I guess these two guys will be running AIP, I guess, because they're on the board. But the other two gentlemen are not on the board. You've got a gentleman named Dr. Eldad Haber, who has 20 years of developing commercial software. He's on the advisory board. There's Kevin O'Neill, who is a Railtown founder, but he's on the advisory board, and he's a Merrill Lynch guy, as I am, but he's probably I mean, looks, I have no idea. He looks older than I am in this picture because I'm looking at it. He's probably much younger than I am. Because when I look at people, I still think I'm young, and I'm not. And then there's Michael Norbrega, and he was an AIP founder, but he's on the advisor board. He's former president and CEO of the Ontario Municipal Employees Retirement Systems, and he also was CEO of infrastructure subsidiary. And then there's John Ruffalo, who's an advisory board member of Railtown now. He's originally an AIP founder, but he's founder and managing partner of Mavericks Private Equity, founder of Omer's Ventures. He ran that for 8 years. And that was the venture capital arm of Omer's. And during that time, he invested Omer's venture capital into more than 40 disruptive technology companies across America. And then there's a gentleman named Cameron Schuler. He's on the advisory board of Railtown, and he comes from the Vector Institute, and he was with the think tank Amy. So it's all very valuable, all very valuable. But these two gentlemen are exceptional, and they all are. But these two men definitely are exceptional. But remember, they decided after they met Corey Brandolini and Marwan, and I guess Dr. Elliott, Rambling Jack Elliott, they decided, buy us out. So I think it's a complete misunderstanding. This is where the talent is. The talent's all through this. But I think Railtown, in that assessment, gets a bad rap. I think Railtown, there's a reason it was valued at 85% and AIP at 15%. It's not to denigrate anybody. It's to say Railtown is fantastic. That's what it means. I'm not trying to bring down anybody else. But I think these guys are on the advisory board, by the way. I don't know why, for sure. But I think rather than being on the board, I think they want to be on the advisory board because, to be blunt about it, I think they want to establish meaningful positions in Railtown stock. And I'm not sure you can do that when you're on the board. So it's, I think it's a good sign for buying pressure later on. So anyway, a little off track on my message, but the idea that given by one whale that, the AIP guys are tremendous, but the Railtown, they don't know what they're doing. I not only is that completely not accurate, I don't think that should have been said. And I only heard it second or third hand. So, but the reason I even bring it up is that's behind us, number one, but I don't think it's correct. I think the jewel here, the combination is amazing. And the AIP acquisition is a beautiful thing. But I think the jewel here is the genius of Marwan Haddad and Corey Brandolini meeting 6 years ago and purposely getting an early start for what they knew was going to be coming. And now we're in a perfect storm to benefit from it. We're able to buy that stock today less expensively than it was trading a year ago. And I would argue we're buying it cheaper than a lot of the people who bought funded the company, when you consider that a lot of that funding came in 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, the opportunity cost of that money compared to ours. If I'm right, and you bought this a year ago, like I did in my small account, I think it's an 18-month situation. I could be wrong. It could take a lot longer, but I think it's 18 months. A lot of these people will by that time have been in it 6.5, 7 years. So we're able to buy at such an incredible price without as much opportunity costs, as much time, in my judgment. It's amazing. But I think denigrating Railtown because the acquisition of AIP took so long is grossly unfair. One could argue, as I think I did in a couple of my I suppose angry moments, that if you're the CEO of Railtown, you hop a flight and you go just get it done. But we don't know what was on the agenda over in, one's in Toronto, one's in Vancouver. We don't know what was going on. We don't have a clue. But I tell you what, in the middle of it all, TELUS came through. This TELUS thing is giant. It's giant. But of course, the shorts, who have their own agenda and are protecting their own position, in a period of time where the buyers can't come in, and there's quite a bit of a news blockout, they just keep pressing their bet and they sell. They manipulate the price every day, even by 0.0004, so it's red, so you get sick of it and you're like, it's always red, and the tension builds up, and it's a well practiced scheme they have. And so they want you to think that TELUS isn't big, that something's wrong with the Railtown people, that they couldn't close the AIP deal quickly. Well, I mean, that might be debatable, that it could have been done better, but this is like a ball game. We're still in the game. It's like I was trying to remember the World Series, and I can't really come up with a scenario that you're going to remember, but there's so many times in baseball where a guy's on the field and the ball gets through him at second, or he goes in a long run out in the field, dives, misses the ball, and 2 runs come in as the ball scoots to the wall. There's so many times where an error or just a misplayed ball in the field costs a team 2 or 3 runs, and everyone's dejected. But if they go back to the dugout and just sit there, and you shouldn't have run in, why didn't you run back? You cost us the game. It's all over. If you go do that and you still have another 3 innings, another 4 innings, you're going to lose the game. You got to go back to the dugout, try to shake it off, worry about what could have been done differently later, and get up to bat. And there's so many times. I used to watch Earl Weaver's baseball. It was based on his strategy on a 3-run home run. And so many times the person who made the bad play that costs runs was able to get up to bat later in the game, and with one swing of the bat change the whole game back, and they can win. But it's only if you keep your mind in the game. You got to shake off. Nobody's perfect. And yes, maybe Railtown could have the CEO could have done something to speed up AIP. But I'm going to submit to you, and I say it without any rancor or uh, diminishment, but it's much more probable that the professor said, "Hey, I'll get it done," and he didn't have the same proficiency for it that perhaps Corey could have. But if Corey accepted what he was saying, hey, it'll be done in a couple weeks, should be over with, should be soon. I'm hearing it'll be, I'm hearing it'll be very quick. Everything's clean. They've done all the paperwork perfectly, and the files are great. It should be pretty simple. But then it goes on and on and on and on and on. It's easy to judge it in retrospect, in reverse mirror. It really is. But I think what you're going to find out is that Railtown with AIP, all of these guys, you're really in something special. And I don't think it helps to try to tell Corey, you should not have made a dive for that ball. Why didn't you just let it bounce? And before you caught it, worst case, there would have been one run. Now you let in 3 runs. Well, then you're going to lose the sight of the whole thing. We can't do that. Let's just leave that behind. Let's leave all of that recrimination. Let's leave it all in 2025. So I want to share some concepts, not too many, but it's not going to be 3, but the main purpose, the overall purpose of what I'm saying is that as I've made projections, the higher the projection, there's going to be more variability. The shorter the time frame and the higher, there's going to be more variability. And one of those bits of variability showed up in the AIP transaction. I mean, I would argue that could have been done in June or July. So we missed, 90 to 120 days. But you know what we don't know? What we don't know? We don't know when TELUS came into the whole equation. And we don't know how important yet the news and the information around TELUS is. It's quite possible, and I would submit to you, we're witnessing it right now, that even when AIP closes, there's more that has to be disclosed before these buyers come in. And that gets back to how I started, the idea that, well, if it's so great, why aren't some buyers front-running the people following the law? Why aren't some buyers breaking the law like they do in New York and start moving it up? Well, it implies there's more news that needs, or more disclosure that needs to be made before all this buying can come in. Or there just are no buyers. I guess that's possible. But again, I really want us to leave that those kind of accusations, let's just leave them in 2025. The company did get the AIP deal done under budget. I don't know about the on time, but they got it done under budget. And I think it's as nearly a certainty as I can judge. Doesn't mean I'm right, but the company is not going to do a deal with Canaccord or anybody that's toxic. So we're not going to have this huge, Anson Fund type attack on the market cap, and AIP is closed. So we got by those two risks. The only other one is the technology. Did somehow the delay in the full disclosure, I don't know, this blackout, I don't know what to call it. Did that delay cost Railtown its 6-year lead in its primary product? And I guess we don't really know that. But I think the fact that TELUS has chosen to partner with Railtown, on the one hand, gives us tremendous indication that Railtown's technology is first, prime mover, or whatever, first mover, and best in class. Because TELUS has a lot riding on this, a lot. If you haven't followed TELUS, there's a lot of buy recommendations out there, but there's a lot of sell recommendations too. Their dividend is very high on a percentage basis, which implies that there's a lot of people questioning whether or not they can make those payments. So TELUS has to make sure this succeeds, it would seem to me. They're not going to pick the inferior product. I do not believe there is another product equivalent to Railtown, but that's something that needs to be learned. There's no way to know it right now. So the frustration, which you can blame on me, you don't have to blame on yourselves, blame it on me, is that I was pretty adamant for the last 6 months, maybe 7. I'm not trying to diminish. I'm just, from June 5th onward, that this was all pretty urgent. Well, I obviously I was wrong, but it's possible the AIP delay may or may not have made a difference, because into the mix came TELUS, and I do not know, but maybe some of the TELUS disclosures, if there are any coming, would have kept us in this blackout anyway for buying. I don't know. Anyway, luckily, it's all behind us now. Pretty much all behind us now. All we're waiting for is the blackout to end. And I think we're in that process. We're in the middle of that process. Do we have to wait for the bureaucracy at TELUS? Do we have to wait for the bureaucracy at the regulator? Do we have to wait for some other thing that hasn't been disclosed? Yeah, maybe. But that AIP conclusion in last month is fantastic. So we're starting to come to the end of the, I really don't know what to call it, the blackout period for buying. We're coming to the end of it. I think because of the holidays, it's unlikely anything gigantic in a price move happens this year. I know I used that word earlier. Anything major in a move. But I think there still could be this coming week, there could be news from any number of areas or research that could really start the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-day, 1 week, 2 week process, allowing buyers to start coming in. And that could happen before the end of the year. But I would suggest to you that, and we'll try to talk about price targets later, but I would suggest to you that the stock, when it shows strength this year, and I think it will still, you're talking about going to 40 cents, unfortunately. And put it on me. Don't get mad at yourselves. Just say, just stay in the game. Blame me. Don't blame yourselves. And don't blame the company either. Keep confidence in the company. Just blame me. Just say that I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. And I'm an old, washed out trading desk. What'd she call me? Whatever. So what I'd like to suggest to you is we establish a new target time frame. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to take that long, but we have to go with the things we know. And one of the things we know is our first quarter, it'll be their second quarter, but the January, February, March quarterly period, at the conclusion of that, it normally takes up to 45 days to report those financials. So one bit of information we know is on or before April 15th, we will know the revenue from January, February, March. So I would suggest, for our sanity, that we just accept that it could take until April 15th to know, well, it'll certainly take until then to know the exact revenues, but to really get a picture of revenues might take that long. I think it's going to be much sooner, but just so that we can keep our heart rates down and not be upset, so we can have a plan. And if it is true it's April 15th, research and etc. could take a week or two. So maybe by May 1st, International Labor Day, that's our new time frame. That's our opportunity. And if we're able to buy stock and build our positions for all of that time, that would be great. I don't think we're going to have that chance. But if we can just shift our time frame from every day and the next month and the end of 2025, blame me, don't blame anyone else. And we can move it now to May 1st or sooner. I think we can calm down. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that you're going to have to wait that long for the stock price to do amazing things, but you might. That's all I'm saying. I don't think so, but That's when we know we'll get hard information. We have to. April 15th is when we'll know about our first quarter's revenue. And that'll be Railtown's second quarter. And, it may take days or a week or so for that to filter through into research. So that's the outside, and that's what I'm suggesting to you. Let's just plan on our new deadline, our new target to live to is May 1st. But do not despair. I want to go through some of what's coming prior to that. But if we could just take this daily and weekly and monthly pressure off of ourselves, which you can blame on me, we can get about our lives and we can start planning on other things. And, I went to, anyway, the priest today is really weird. He's talking about waiting. That was his message, talking about waiting. And he said, of course, he's talking in terms of God and all that, but I'm not going to try to bring that into this message. But he said, waiting's not a punishment. Waiting is preparation. And the whole world has been designed. He said that there's a study that the average human being has waited 5 years of their life in line. And waiting's a big part of living. And anyway, his view was, and he talked in terms of, higher level ideas, but he was saying that waiting is the time to prepare. And maybe if it happened quickly, whatever you were hoping for happened quickly, you wouldn't be ready for it. And which sounds a little bit like some of the runs in AME and GMC and others when you look back on it. So he says some other things. I won't try to be a priest, but it was just very interesting that was the message, that the period of time that you're waiting is a time of preparation. And then it also allows you to heal. And but let's leave all that out. All right. All of the projections I've given you, like May 5th, I said it would be $55. I think that's been shifted. Maybe 90 days, 100 days, something like that. But I'm not saying it's not possible that you could get massive numbers in the price of the stock. But I think we have to just accept that we got to put it out 90 days, put it out 100 days. And surprises will come, because let me tell you, there is no good news priced into the stock of Railtown right now. Everything is negative in that price. So it won't take much to make it go up sooner. But a lot of my projections, revenue, time, I think are going to happen. but it's been moved out. So we know some public information, and we went through it yesterday. And we know it from press releases, from corporate presentations, articles, and from the general market surrounding the AI and software developer space. But as the blackout ends, as news comes out, as research comes out, some of these projections are going to clarify. For example, I believe there's enormous barriers to entry in this market space, not the way Corey talks about it, in the way that competitors to Railtown, it's going to be very hard for competitors to create the first mover advantage, and in the case of Canada, become the component on the only sovereign AI data center that's ready to go in this new campaign. I think it's going to be, I think there are high barriers to entry in terms of time, money, brain power. So I think Railtown's well ahead. We don't know for sure. So anyway, that barrier, that's a question that'll become clear as research comes out, as news comes out. But right now, we have to do our best effort to understand that. The idea that conductor and rail tracks and the rest are all first, best, and ahead of everyone, that too, a very closely related issue, that'll come clearer. But right now, we have to make our best assumptions and best guesses based on the information we have. The revenue targets, I gave you a high target yesterday, which could be low. And I'm going to do a low one today too, which will be low. But you've got 2026 revenues, 7 and 8. That kind of time frame will all get incorporated in research reports and guidance, and it'll be discounted into the price of the stock. So as this blackout ends, you're going to hear, at least through research reports, you're going to start hearing about guidance and revenue and timing, which right now, frankly, I can only give broad guesses on and projections on based on information we have, but that can be adjusted. So some of my targets, they could be low, or you can find out that they're going to be, silly high. We don't know yet. So you do the best you can, but I'll tell you one thing, everything, including the lowest projections you can make, are a lot higher than where the stock is trading right now. The stock is trading as if it's going to be seller box. The stock is trading as if she's going to go bankrupt. The stock is trading as if they have they're trying to sell a Sony Betamax in the time of Netflix. I mean, it's unbelievable how cheap it is. And it's wrong. The price of the stock is wrong. It's manipulated, and it's just wrong. The multiples I give you, multiples are not a fixed rule of thumb. You have to look at the comps, but multiples are also based on growth rates or revenue growth rates. So if you have revenues climbing up the ski slope, going reverse up the ski slope or going up like a vertical jet takeoff, well, then you get a high multiple down in the lower numbers. As you get near the top, the multiple changes because the number itself is so big. But right now, the best evidence I've shown you for for multiples, looking back, ignoring 25, going backwards 4 or 5 years, 5 years, 24 and back, in 90 some cases, the low was 12x as a multiple on revenue. The high was 55x on revenue. The average came in, to my memory, at 29x. That's looking back on almost 100 deals, ignoring this current year we're in. This year we're in, we've seen deals go as high as 200x or higher. The closest comp was Lang Chain, based on estimated projected revenues. They didn't even have that many, but they annualized it at 12 to 16 million, and it's essentially a 90x. I mean, if you go with a higher number, I think it was 84x, but somewhere between 80 and 90x. Again, it's because it's early in the cycle and they assume revenues are going to grow like a rocket ship. Then you have a company like SoundHound, who also revenues come out of nowhere. I don't remember, they're projected next year over 200 million, and the stock prices come down. So the multiple has come down from 35 to around 22x, maybe 20x. So multiples are a function of the size of the revenues and the growth in the revenues in this case, and then the ultimate target, how high the revenues could be annually. So again, those are a moving target. They fluctuate, but in an arms race, which is what we've been made aware of by, and I'm trying to remember, I showed you comments from the CEO of GitHub, I think it was, and 2 or 3 other of these geniuses who talk about arms race or the rush to acquire first movers. So we know some things, but we have a broad margin of error until information starts coming out. The other thing is discounting. When revenues get projected, this research I read to you from Research Capital from a year and a half ago, they're projecting a 3% penetration on a $3 billion market, but they're using a multiple of 12x on what they extrapolate Railtown's 2027 revenue would be, and they wrote the thing a year and a half ago, a year and 4 months ago. June 2nd of 2024. So they're projecting in the outer years what revenue is going to be. They bring it back in their calculations and they come up with a target using a revenue that reflect a multiple that reflects where revenue is now and where it's going to grow. Again, this is something that we're going to learn more about. And as we learn these things, our targets can tighten up. Right now, a lot of it is our best efforts to process the information we have. but the stock is, I mean, that old research report has a $2 target on Railtown before before TELUS, and frankly, before AIP. I would suggest to you that Railtown has some excellent knowable projectable revenues because of well, let's just narrow it down to two things. One is the network of companies at AIP are going to move to TELUS because Railtown controls that network. We don't know how long, and that's where research will come in and discounting, but it's going to come. And the other thing is Canada, although it's a small market compared to the United States, it's one of the largest markets in the world, but it's a small market in the United States, is dedicating herself to a sovereign AI strategy. So Railtown, if you want to think of it this way, perhaps it would be subsumed in the US economy because there's all this competition and it's a small fish in a big pond. I don't think that's the case. I do think they are the only product. Again, we're going to find that out. But their playground, their target right now, because of TELUS, their initial proof of concept ability is Canada. And so they are a big fish, I think, in a relatively big pond. But it's a protected pond by culture and probably by government encouragement and education and all that. So I think maybe some of these issues of, well, you can't dismiss the idea that you've fallen behind technologically. But if TELUS is choosing, which apparently, I mean, it's in the press, Railtown as its whatever word you use, platform component, I don't think they've lost their step. But in Canada, I think it's pretty clear that Railtown is first, best in class, and is the dedicated go-to guy and girl. They are the go-to product for TELUS. So that's huge. It's just huge. And I guess the final thing I wanted to point out is one thing that could interrupt my projections is if the company gets bought out. And I can make projections that I think the buyout is going to be $55 or $80. But I don't know. I mean, if a buyout were to come, an offer unsolicited were to come in February or March, and they made an offer at $10 or $15, that would have to be shown to shareholders. And who knows? It might get the votes. So that would be great, by the way, but it would be lower than some of my targets. So then to achieve those targets would be inside of whatever the acquiring companies implementation of Railtown strategy is. Remember, in buyouts, even if it's at $15, and I'm not making a projection, by the way, just saying that that's a layer of decision making that I have no control of. You don't either. But one advantage of a buyout, let's say Microsoft or Oracle were to buy them out, it is a step up in your equity in your account without having to pay any taxes until you sell the stock. All right, I guess those were mostly my concepts I wanted to go over. I did tell you that we're at 16,500,000 shares. I haven't done this arithmetic, but I wanted to just, I did try to make some projections until April. This was for myself. You can do it. It's a mess, so I can't really show it to you, but I can read it to you. You can do it every day yourself. When you're having a cup of coffee, take out a pad of paper. What I wrote down this morning as I was having coffee is, and this is all conservative, this is all to, as I have suggested to you, to radically accept where we are in a positive way and not looking back anymore, shaking it off. That was the third inning of the game. And now I've got to grab my mitt and go back in the field. So just to prepare myself, how am I going to handle my sanity until, let's say, April 1st or May 1st. So I figure a reasonable target for the end of the year price for Railtown might be 40 cents a share, give or take slightly. Unless, and see now my unlesses now, my surprises now are all to the upside. We are priced in, the stock is priced to go out of business. It's silly. So my surprises now are to the upside. So if research were to come out next week or the following week, or if next week, tomorrow even, TELUS were to announce enough information that allowed the regulators to lift or to say, hey, that's enough disclosure. Of course, right, they wouldn't know everything in the background. So each investor and the company, they'd have to make the decision, has enough been disclosed? But anyway, so if you had research, if TELUS announced something that really excited the market, or if you started to remove the blackout before the end of the year, that stock price could go significantly higher. But I still don't think it would break above the highs, 69 cents by the end of the year. And that's radical acceptance. It's 2 more weeks of accepting the hole we're in, the whole year in. So then I wrote down for January 15th, because remember, the first week of January, everybody's going to be skiing. I'm talking on Wall Street. I'm not talking at Railtown. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about at the institutional funds. Well, so I wrote down January 15th. My target is the stock will go to 60 cents, maybe to 65 cents by January 15th. Can I live with that? I don't have much choice, of course. Unless, again, the surprise could be to the upside. Unless there's research, unless there's further TELUS news or other news we don't even know about. And of course, the big one would be if the full full distribution of news occurred by then, which removed the blackout so that buyers could come in. Oh man, the stock could be much higher, much higher. But that was by January 15th. By January 30th, I said 90 cents. That doesn't sound that high, does it? But I figured if it got to 60 cents by January 15th, going up by 50% as buyers, because I think buyers are going to start coming in the end. Canadian, knowledgeable buyers, the buyers that matter to the stock price. I think it could drift to 90 cents by January 30th. But it's the same caveat. If research comes out, maybe more than one research, or if news, including TELUS, or if revenue projections come out, or if because of the full distribution of all the material news, you start seeing funds come in to buy, man, that stock could be $1, $2, $3. But anyway, I wrote this down and I'll change it. I'll do it every morning, probably when I have a cup of coffee. I think 90 cents by January. Okay. And then I wrote February 15th. I put $1.50 by February 15th. I think buying is going to start at the end of January and beginning of February. And then I put February 28th, $2, March 15th, $3, March 30th, $5. And then, of course, is it April 15th that we'd see the earnings, or is it May 15th? I might be off even in what I've given you. I might be off January, February, March, April. No, it'd be May 15th. So I guess what I started with, it should be June 1. June 1 should be our, in other words, May 15th should be when, at worst case, we'll see hard revenue numbers. I think you're going to see so many projections before that. And then maybe with a little bit of lag, maybe June 1. But anyway, I would say by April, May, the stock is in the $10, $15 range. But I didn't write any of that down. And I'll try to print something out for tomorrow on that. But my point is, if you can sit down and sort of scope out what you think the price could do for the next 3 to 5 months, and I think any surprises will be up. Doesn't mean, I guess a negative surprise would be some macro thing like an asteroid hitting Quizmoonsi data center. But, the good thing about a 5-month target or a 6-month target, a lot of those huge variables unknowables, you can it's very low odds that anything like that will happen in the next 6 months. Like an asteroid or a volcano or earthquake or things like that, or man-made too. Anyway, so I just want to, before I go to your comments, and I have a few things to show, I didn't do this morning. I had to go. So I didn't have time to do it. But I want to give a low revenue projection. I don't want, this is one of my pieces of simplicity. I don't want to include any revenue from that Railtown's going to get anywhere from conductor. Nothing. I don't want to or rail tracks. I don't want to count anything they're going to earn from the installation of their software or revenue from their software. I don't want to count any of it. That's leaving a lot of upside revenue out of the story. I don't want to count any of the roll-up revenue, 400 million and higher, that they're going to roll up sometime in the future by acquiring the network companies and consolidating. I don't want to include that. The only thing and I don't want to include other potential data centers or other contracts in the future that could lead to some sort of revenue sharing. I mean, it's conceivable that Railtown could enter into an agreement with Bell Canada that's in this sheet, and it was in the articles, or one of those other data centers that were in the things I showed you yesterday. I don't want to count any of that. I only want to count two sources of revenue. Two. Dr. Tom Core is going to have to cause, I assume he's in charge at AIP, he's going to have to cause the network companies to transfer over to TELUS. We know from Dr. Tom Core's conversation, according to one of the audience, I haven't re-listened to it to check, we know from the investor deck from November that 120 million in revenue will be transferred. Now, we don't know if they'll give it a discount or if there's any costs. We don't know the time frame for full completion, but we do know apparently that this is 125 companies, and there's a total of probably 200 by now at because AIP's customer company number, it keeps growing. So I think we can use 120 million as a target for shared hosting with TELUS. A target that will be reached, I don't know, we could go all the way out to 2028. Look, once this revenue gets booked, it's not going anywhere. So the great thing about the hosting revenue is you sign up and it repeats year and year and year and year and year afterward. And I mean, I guess it's limited by, will technology change and you don't need data centers? I suppose there's always that. But until the idea of data centers and telecoms, it's going to repeat every single year. So it's very valuable revenue. And as analysts and institutions look at that hosting revenue and say, look, if Dr. Core can move, and we already know he's a little bit slower than the average bear, but it doesn't mean he can't get it done efficiently. They've already, according to the data, they've already selected 5 companies, and I'm sure he can get that done pretty well. But well, that was to roll up. Sorry, that was to roll up, and we're ignoring that for now. But the hosting, will move over. The hosting is for AI companies that are in the network of AIP, and then they create 400 million in revenue by spending 120 million hosting their services elsewhere. Dr. Tom Core is going to move that over to TELUS. They make their percentage of that 400 million. So anyway, we know that. I think that's a baseline that we can assume is going to happen. Could it take 18 months? Could it take 24 months? Sure. But the analysts will project it, bring that forward, and I think give it a high value. One, because it's going to grow. I think they'll implement it pretty quickly. It'll ramp up. Two, it's probably as close to 100% payout as you can get. And three, once it's in place, the revenue never ends. So I think we can count on that. And then there's the TELUS number. TELUS is going to tell its clients to use this data center, and with that data center, use Railtown. We don't know, are they going to do it with 10% of their clients that use that data center? All of their clients that use that data center? Something in between? We don't know that yet, but based on what I read to you yesterday from 2 or 3 things, including the presentation, I think a case can be made that TELUS chose Railtown as its partner specifically to be that layer between the data center, TELUS, and bringing in the end users. So TELUS converts the end user to this data center, but it's pretty clear that TELUS needs the frameworks that Railtown has created to make that successful. I think it's reasonable to assume that Railtown's going to get a huge, maybe the whole thing, maybe the whole enchilada. But I bet they're going to gulp down the majority of the enchilada. And that number, by the way, that shared revenue could be $2 billion or more by 2008. But you know what? I just want to calculate it based on the 120 million and see what happens. If we assume a 20% payout, I don't know what's good, 15%, 20%, 25%, 10%. Let's use 15% will be very low. I think 20% is better, but let's use 15%. I lost my calculator. Here it is. All right, if we use 120 million as what's being transferred over for hosting at 15%, which I think is low, you get an $18 million annual recurring revenue. So I'm ignoring TELUS's massive contribution, and I'm ignoring that this could double or triple. I'm only using what they showed in this statement, 125 companies. And I think 15% is probably low, but we're never going to know, I bet. That could be 20%, 22.5. It could be 1875. I don't know. But use 15%. That revenue is going to move over. That's 18 million in 12 months revenue, forward 12 months, that is going to be projectable at some point by analysts or by institutions. And it could be in January they come up with this number. Could be March, could be February, could be August. We don't know. But this is the most, in this uncertain world, this is the most certain of the numbers to work with. It's disclosed in the investor packet. And I've shown it to you over and over again. And if we use 15%, completely reasonable, that's 18 million in annual recurring revenue. Well, I would suggest to you that sets Railtown up to get the exact same valuation that LangChain received at a minimum when the several institutions invested 125 million into LangChain, which is, I'm sure it's a great product, but I think it's inferior to Railtown's product for this aspect. I think 1.25 billion is completely achievable, and that, just on that revenue alone, I think Railtown can go up 28 times from here. I would lower that because of unknowables like number of shares. If we just say 25 times here, which maybe I didn't lower it enough, but I think that's pretty conservative. That gives you a target of $7.75. Using a 25 multiple times the closing price, it gives you $7.75 per share target. And that's just the hosting revenue that we know about from the network. I'm completely ignoring TELUS. And I'm ignoring that this number will be higher. And I'm using 15% of that goes to Railtown, 18 million. And what we don't know is when are those projections for the next 12 months going to show this. It could be in the first quarter. It could be in August. It's conceptual that it'd take a year to figure it out. I don't think so. That's what we'll find out. But that gives you, at a 25x, that gives you $7.75 target for your stock. And that's as low and as simple as this story is. You're ignoring everything except the AIP network hosting revenue. That's all you're looking at. And obviously, if you don't want to use 25x, you want to use half of that, well, then your target's essentially $4. On the other hand, if you think this should get, because of all the other revenue, it should get much higher, let's say 50x, that's $14 target. But again, I'm only looking at the disclosed 120 million being transferred. Everything, all other revenue, I'm ignoring. And the stock right now trades at 30 cents. And just with that revenue, on a pretty conservative multiple, which would get it to the LangChain valuation, it's it's a $7 or $8 stock as trading for 29 cents just from that one source of revenue. Don't even focus on anything else. Anyway, all right, let me go through your comments, and then I had a couple of things to show you. And depending on your comments, I might end the call at that point. Hey T Alex, you are number one today. Number one in everybody's heart. And it's a good chance to show you how many shares we have, 16.5 million. Pretty big number. Fast Eddie comes in at number 2. Not as fast as T Alex. T Alex says good Sunday afternoon. William. And Donna says, hello, William. Hope you had a pleasant walk yesterday evening. I did. It's getting really cold, though. But I did. I walked down to Chinatown. And then walked. There was an outdoor festival thing, but you had to be invited. But anyway, I walked down in that area, and yeah, thank you. It was a very nice walk, and I'm just amazed at the development going on in DC. It's incredible. The areas I'm walking in now, if I had walked in them 20 years ago, I don't think I would have made it. Or at least that's what I would have thought. But it would have been catch as catch can. But now, I don't think there's anything perfectly safe in DC. But now you can, even I think with the sun down, you could do it. But I got back in the dusk, so it was great. Thank you. T. Alex, AIP was formed in 2020 with the goal of establishing a worldwide affiliate network of AI as a service-based companies focused on providing AI-based solutions in a select number of sectors. Yep. These sectors include healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, and fintech, as well as sector-agnostic AI development tools and applications. Yep, and we've seen that. The list of them, T. Alex, is on the website, and I'd say it's at least 8 different categories. It might be more, but it's there. And I've gone through them. Some of them don't. I haven't checked every website, but I've asked Google what's their revenue. And quite a few don't even show up in revenue meaningfully, but a lot of them do. So there is revenue there. Scott Van Dyke. I'm going to write this down, I think. Good morning to me, William, and to RT. Keep adding. Keep adding in this dip. Now at 89. That is amazing. I'm glad all of you guys are getting to do this. I really am. The nervous tick that I'm showing, it's not jealousy, it's not envy. It's because I'm very happy for you. I'm really happy. I am happy. I'm happy for everybody buying more. T. Alex, AIP has established a network of over 180. Yeah, and I think in that, I don't want to look it up. It said, I think in one of these pages here, it says 180 plus. And then and somewhere else in there, it says 170. Yeah, like right there, it shows 170 right there. But then in another page, it shows. Let me see if I can find it. My point being, it's growing. We don't know. That's another. These are all cases of variables that I'm doing my best. I'm making assumptions around them. You can make your own assumptions. But as the information gets more certain and more people understand it, that this price is going to go up to meet that information. So the one amazing power each of you has, the one amazing opportunity each of you has, you can buy. You don't have the fear of buying that a bunch of people have. You don't have the perhaps, I don't know, but I don't think you have the false deadline of the end of the year. You might have lingering frustration with me that I had such urgency and turned out to be wrong. But, you know, we're back in the dugout, grabbing our mitts. We're back in the dugout, waiting for our turn to bat. And got to shake it off. And I think it's great. The good news is this company is fantastic. See where right here, T. Alex, right here, it says affiliate network 180 plus. So this was in November, and so it went from 170 to 180 plus, assuming it keeps growing, and maybe it's at 195 by now. I wouldn't know, 190 by now. Who knows? It's growing. 180 SaaS based affiliates, AI affiliates, headquartered in Canada and the United States, offices worldwide. Thank you, Scott Scheller. Feliz Navidad, Senor William. Hope you are well. I'm well. I'm gonna have to start wearing a ponytail. I hope you're well. Merry Christmas to you. MH, Merry Christmas. Bill, wishing you the best and good health for 2026. Same to you, right back at you. T. Alex, does anyone here think, anyone here think that in the background Constellation software has something to do with Railtown AI? I think that Mavericks, John Ruffalo, obvious buyer of shares. I think Homer's Venture, obvious buyers of shares. So I think in that sense that those buyers who were the initial investors in Constellation software, that'll be an obvious link. But and the model of Constellation software is obviously being imitated. But I think, T. Alex, one of the risks to the Constellation story is if their software companies, and I don't know how many software companies are in there in the company, but if those software companies fall behind on AI, that would affect revenue, and other competitors could come up. You know, AI has a chance to transform these niche software companies with vertical markets that don't have a lot of reach. AI could replace all that difficulty and basically arbitrage out the value that Constellation has created. So my point is, Constellation is to me, is a very clear buyer or investor or both in Railtown. Constellation Software also, I'm thinking, I didn't think about this until now, but Constellation Software they have new management because the CEO stepped down. But that would be a group of companies, and the major company, Constellation Software. What if you went to them as Railtown and said, you're Canada, pretty much, North America. Why don't you move your any hosting you have to TELUS? But if you don't have any of that going on, why don't you move these end users over to TELUS with Conductor, and then strike a revenue sharing deal for Constellation Software? There's a lot of upside there. And I think most importantly with Constellation Software is their investors are going to hear the story about Railtown. They're going to hear about Dr. Tom Core and the IBM guy and AIP, and I think money is going to come in as soon as the full disclosure blockade is lifted. T. Alex, AIP, Railtown, TELUS. Yeah, I think together they would be really powerful. And imagine if Constellation Software has an advantage of moving to the TELUS data center or having their companies, and they use Railtown. I mean, I don't think people have stopped to realize how the sheer magnitude potential of the upside simply from hosting. And we'll find out. You know, right now I'm trying to, squint and see what's there. Soon some guy will come with a squeegee and a spray of Windex and wipe our windshields and then ask for some money. All right, you guys. Smile, Arthur. People work here. Sit up, Arthur. People work here. Later on, we'll have ice cream. I will bring my ice cream, sir. And then there's Silver Skyrocket. All right, let me see what I wanted to show you, if it's anything much. I think it was worthwhile, but I'll find out. And then I think I'll sign off for let you guys go watch your football. All right, so maybe it's not very much. It might just be 3 things. That's not bad. All right, what's the first one? I asked, what are Canadian companies, small and medium sized, spending on software? And AI said, Canadian small and medium sized enterprise spending on software development varies greatly, but typically ranges from 9,000 to 200,000 for small businesses and 50,000 and 500,000, I assume, annually for the medium size. And remember, I left all that out of my projections, but that's the upside. If Conductor really is this fantastic tool, that's trying to measure the size of the addressable market. Project-based costs depend heavily on complexity, from simple apps, which cost tens of thousands, to complex systems. So that it gives the spending range, as we said. And here's underutilization. Here's the opportunity. Many SMEs invest but don't use digital tech effectively. And custom software is seen as a valuable asset, with companies increasingly budgeting for it. This is what they make per hour, 100 to 200 smackers. Anyway, I left all that out because we don't know it. And it might be, if you have really small 1-2 man shops, women shops, might not be a much annually. I don't know how to calculate what that is. So I left it blank. Anyway, then I asked, what does a data center need in order to attract these customers? So here was the answer. To provide compute power to AI companies, a data center needs a comprehensive software stack encompassing orchestration and management tools. That's Railtown. Machine learning platforms. I think that's the large language models. I don't know if Railtown has that, because I thought that was a distinction. They're not focused on that. But anyway, we'll find out. And libraries, I guess the library would be at the data center, NVIDIA. I don't know. They also need core data center infrastructure management software. I don't know if Railtown does that. But here, orchestration and automation tools, that's Railtown to a T. These are crucial for managing complex distributed AI workloads and scaling resources efficiently across clusters of GPUs and other AI accelerators. I got to look up this Kubernetes open source platform. I don't know what to say about that. ML Ops, Kubeflow, MLflow, NVIDIA. Well, that seems to be different than what Railtown's doing. Don't know. And then workflow orchestrators, that is Railtown. Of course, I guess this is some competitors, Apache Airflow, Dagster, and Prefect. So, but that's what Railtown does. And we've got to learn, are these competitors better, complementary, or is it just a different market altogether? But remember, they're not Telus didn't pick any of these guys, so we've got that going for us. Infrastructure as code, and we might be in there, I don't know. These are all things we're going to find out. And I submit to you, we're going to start finding out as soon as next week. Machine learning platforms, I think that is the large language models and libraries. We have to find out how the data center handles that. Deep learning frameworks. Leading open source frameworks include TensorFlow and PyTorch. I think Railtown's right here. GPU optimized software. The NVIDIA AI Enterprise, well, that's what they're using. They're not using CUDA. Data analytics software. I think that, I don't know if that's a competitor or complementary. Data center infrastructure management and monitoring. Monitoring and observability tools. That is Railtown. So I hope we fit in better than Prometheus, Grafana, Datadog, and Splunk. I hope we splunk down in between them. And Sunbird and the like. But I think we're better. We'll find out. In summary, data centers providing AI compute services required a specialized integrated software ecosystem that effectively manages and orchestrates powerful parallelized workloads while ensuring the underlying infrastructure operates efficiently and reliably. And I think that's where we are. But we'll find out that as we go. Ward Richardson, good afternoon, William and RT crew. Constellation owns 800. All right, I'm going to write that down. I don't know where you found that, but I wanted to know that. Constellation owns 800 to 1,000. Mission critical niche. Niche vertical. That's a lot, Ward. That's a lot. And then there's Steve. Hi, Uncle Bill. How are you, Steve? I know Amo. I don't know nephew. Is it Baba? No, I don't think that's right. I think that's also uncle. Well, I think this is terrible, this Brown University. And Bondi Beach. It's almost as if, well, I won't say. I won't guess. One of the heroes who disarmed a Bondi Beach attacker, he's Muslim. He can't be a good guy doing something like a hero. He's one of them Muslims. Of course, I'm being facetious. Of course I am. Holocaust survivor killed while shielding wife from Bondi Beach terror attack. It's terrible. So much to pray for peace in the world. So, Ward, I don't know that I have much more to say. Just to summarize what I'm trying to get across, 2025 is in the rear view mirror. The urgency and the bad call is on me, not on you. And the story has gotten better. So the AIP deal, fantastic. TELUS deal is humongous. It's a behemoth. Behemoth. My dad used to pronounce that differently. But it's a huge, huge deal. And so what we're waiting for is when the institutions and the whales and the insiders and maybe retail up in Canada start buying. They can't buy right now. They know the story, I'm sure. And a lot of those institutions are going to go on vacation. So you have 2 weeks in 2025 and probably 1 week in 2026, probably, to buy this stock inexpensively. Yesterday, I did a calculation. I'm not going to do it again today, but I included the potential from TELUS and from the AIP hosting revenue as growing. You could project quite reasonably at some time in the future. I mean, it could be this year, and maybe it's June of 2027. They project the next 12 months. But I think it's all going to happen rather quickly because these people who are in this space, they understand it. For you and for me, it's an educational process. But as soon as they can see it in the distance, they'll discount it today. And I showed you that it could be more than $1 a share. But if you just use $1 because it's so easy to multiply, $1 a share in forward 12-month annual recurring revenue at some forward 12-month period in the next 3 years, 2026, 2027, 2028. If it just traded at 1 times revenue, now to reflect that future potential, you triple your money. If it trades at 10 times that revenue, now, that's $10. I'm not sure it'll do that in the next 3 weeks, but it could do it at any time. All you need is one buyer: Mavericks, Almers, Constellation Software, others. And this thing's going to firm up more quickly than quick dry cement. See, you thought I was going to say something dirty. So anyway, that's a pretty high number. This number here, the low one would be the lowest one that you can calculate. Would be about 8 cents a share. 8 cents a share in annual revenue. They'll certainly figure that out as soon as they get back from vacation. And if you put 10x on 8 cents a share, you got an 80-cent stock. If you put 100x on 8 cents a share, you got an $8 stock. There's so many ways to come to the obvious conclusion that now AIP's been finished It was done under budget. Now TELUS is fully engaged. It seems to be. We need more news. All we're waiting for is the buyers to come in. They can't buy. They cannot buy. Now, if in your head, the idea is, well, they would buy anyway. They just break the law. Well, I don't know. Most people don't cheat on their taxes. Most people sit at a red light, even if it's 3 in the morning. Most people follow the law. So maybe there's some people, but the selling, the manipulative selling for their own purposes continues unabated. But all you need is 1 or 2 buyers. All you need is the projection. I just showed you with this, just using 120 million that's in the documents of hosting revenue being transferred over to TELUS at 15%. I completely ignored any TELUS generated hosting revenue. That gives you 18%. 18 million, sorry, annual. And if you use 25x, well, what I did here is assume that this gets you a valuation identical to Lang Chain, which is like 27, 28 times higher than where we are now. So I took 25 times 31, 775. But even if you don't do that calculation, you take 18 million, divide it by the number of shares outstanding, fully diluted, you get over 8 cents a share. Put a multiple on it. 8 cents a share in annual recurring revenue. We know multiples go as high as 200, 250x. They all day long, they're at 100x to 200x all day long and the night. They're at 75x. If you use 8 cents times 12x, you've got a 96-cent stock. Just using from hosting the revenue, you know that Railtown's going to have AIP. It'll be Dr. Core doing it probably, and it might be shuffling rather than sprinting. But it's going to happen, and once it happens, it sticks. That gives you 18, dividing 120, multiplying 120 million. That's just the 125 companies transferring over at a 15% hosting rate. And that's the only revenue you look at. You don't look at roll-up revenue. You don't look at any outside revenue. You don't look at any revenue from Conductor at all. You ignore all revenue from Conductor, any of it. Rail tracks, any of it, just zero. And you ignore all of TELUS's own customers signing up for the one sovereign AI data center in Canada, state of the art, which I presume, which we have to get clarified, but from the press release and from the company presentation, I think you can extrapolate they're going to use Conductor. You give that zero. You give all of it zero. And you take the 120 million in declared spend by 120, according to the interview, apparently, 125 out of 180 companies. But you don't allow for increased growth in usage from those 125 companies, and you don't count any of the other, say, 75 companies transferring. This is the minimalist. This is the most naked. This is the bottom number you can calculate. At 15%, you get 18 million in annualized revenue. Now, the one area that I'm being optimistic is once you get that, the brains are going to project reverse ski slope growth from all those other sources that I assume to be zero right now. So they'll give it a multiple equivalent to Lang chain, which they funded to the tune of 125 million. And that's 25, it's greater than 25x from the price right now. That gets you to $7.75 a share. But alternatively, you just take the 18 million, you ignore Lang chain altogether. You just take that 18 million in annualized revenue, the most basic calculation you can make, and you divide it by 225 million shares, you get 8 cents a share in annualized revenue. Pick a multiple. Well, 1x is not going to do nothing, but I'll tell you what, at 29 cents, the stock currently is trading at under 4x for long-term annual revenues, probably at 100%, based on a 15% payout solely on the 125 companies in AIP doing spending 120 million. They are spending it already. It's baked in the cake. They're already spending it. They'll transfer it to TELUS. Just using that, you get 8 cents a share. At 8 cents a share, using today's prices, that stock is trading for less than 4 times annual recurring revenue, the metric that Wall Street's use. So you go and you look at, I probably took it down, you look at this study, which is from 2018 through 2024. These are 90 AI M&A deals. The lowest was 12.8x. The average is 25.8x, and the highest 54.8. Well, take 12.8x times, and this doesn't include 2025. Take 12.8x times 0.08. That gives you $1 a share, $1.02. Take the 0.08 annual recurring revenue solely from hosting the 125 companies who are doing 120 million, divided by 225 million shares outstanding. Take 0.08 and multiply it by the average, ignoring this year, 25.8, and you get a $2.06 stock. Do the same thing at the highest valuation, from ignoring this year, 54.8, and you get a $4.38 stock. Here's some valuations recently. Why don't we run through all of those with 8 cents a share? Let's start down here at 23x. That's $1.84. Why don't we go to the next one at 31x? That's $2.48. Let's go to this one at 45x. That's $3.06. Let's use Cohere's valuation, 55x. It's $4.04. Let's go to Syria's valuation, 60 times 0.08, $4.80. Let's go to Harvey's valuation, 67 times 0.08 cents per share in annualized recurring revenue, $5.36. Let's go to Glean, $5.76. Let's go to Chain Guard, at 88x. That's the very similar to Lang Chain. That gives you $7.04. Let's go to Decagon at 100 and XI, both at 150x. That gives you a $12 target. Is it making your head spin? Very simple. Very simple. 120 million. 120 million. It doesn't have to happen right away. It just has to be projected and believed. 120 million goes over from here, goes into the Thales data center. Conductor is the platform. Thales is the sovereign AI factory here. And they share compute revenue. 120 million. 120 million. It's in the document right here, 120 million. They're going to share the revenue. It's right here. We don't know the percentage. We may never know. But I think 15% is low, by the way. It might be 30%, but again, as I said to you yesterday, I've funded and participated and looked at a lot of oil and gas years over the years. I personally can't remember one where the burden was 30%. I could be wrong, but I can't remember one. That's probably too high. 25%, I think there were some in that range, but very few. 20%, it happens all the time. 15% is really rare. An eighth is just what the government charges, and then you got to layer on everything else. And then my other experience is, Wall Street. And on the institutional side, the lowest it would go is 11%, the split, 11%. But as soon as something was valuable, like production or clients, that went up pretty quickly. It could go all the way up to 30, 40%. So I think 15% is low. So you take the 120 million shared revenue, you multiply it by 15%, you can multiply it by 20% or 25% or 10%, you pick it. But if you multiply it by 15%, you come up with 18 million in annual recurring revenue. One way to look at that 18 million is it's more than the Lang Chain estimate that was given by these brainiacs on Wall Street who valued Lane Chain at 1.25 billion. Well, they only estimated revenue would be between 12 million and 16 million annually, and they gave it that valuation. Well, if you look at that, it comps out at over $7 a share. But you don't have to do that. You can ignore that. You can just take that 18 million number and divide it by look it up on Yahoo, by the outstanding number of shares. Yahoo currently gives that number as, of course I can't find it, 143 million, 0.72, 143 million. Well, I would suggest they haven't added in the 49.5 for the AIP deal. So if you take 143 720,000 and you add 49,500,000 for the AIP deal, and you just assume that all gets issued, that's 193 million. And then I don't know, there's employee options and investor warrants outstanding. It's probably 20 million, 25 million. But if you assume 30 million, you have about 223 million shares outstanding in Railtown. So if you divide 18 million, I mean, I'm being precise, but we don't quite know these numbers. We know the magnitude, but we don't have it with precision. But if you divide that by 223 million, last time I divided it by 225, you come out with 8 cents a share, 0.0807. Last time I divided it by 225, I got 8 cents a share. Well, that's very easy. Then you can, that's 8 cents a share in annual recurring revenue going forward. Put a multiple on it. Do you put 150 on it? Do you put 100 on it? Do you put 50 on it? 25 on it? Right now, the market is putting 4 on it, less than 4x. It's absurd. Railtown is selling as if you're picking up sirloin steak that has been left in a store freezer that lost its electricity a week ago. So the meat is there stinking and it's brown and it might even have some maggots in it. That's what Railtown's selling for right now. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculously cheap. So my suggestion to you, should you accept my suggestion, is we'll put 2025 behind us. Blame it on William. Don't blame it on yourselves or the company. And We're going to leave recriminations behind. We're going to leave our fear behind. And for the next 2 weeks before the end of the year, we're going to take advantage of any tax loss selling, any fearful selling, any, the advice that advisors will give to clients. Why don't you just get out of this stock? Any forced selling, any selling out of disgust, any selling because there's margin calls elsewhere, any selling for time reasons. I've been in it a year. I don't want to be in it anymore. Any of that. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to take advantage, and we're going to take advantage of the computerized selling for the next 2 weeks. Keep buying this stock. If I haven't convinced you it's cheap, I don't know what the hell else I can do. I'll try to type it up so I can show you again tomorrow. But using the lowest data we know, it's 8 cents a share in forward annual recurring revenue, just from hosting, the transfer of roughly half of the hosting requirements of the network companies, which Railtown now owns that network. Guys, girls, it's cheap. It's 8 cents in ARR per share if they move over 120 million. 8 cents. Will they move over 120 million? Undoubtedly, they will do it. When? Maybe Dr. Tom Core, and his chosen attorneys and everything. Maybe it's inefficient, but he'll get it done. He'll get it done. But maybe the first time that 120 million is projectable, all locked down for the forward 12 months, maybe it's in September this year. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that's where Tony Tiptoe is wrong. Tiptoeing tiger. He's wrong. What matters is research analysts can project it, institutional buyers can project it, and you know who can project it? Mavericks, Ulmers, Constellation Software. I would guess Microsoft, who's a partner of Railtown, pretty good at projecting it. I would imagine all those partners of Railtown can project it. Look, I'm just a schmo. This isn't that hard to come up with. The risk to Railtown was the denominator got skewed out of all recognition by the criminals. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. And it's not going to happen. We know the denominator. It's defined. It's fewer than 225 million shares at most. So you know the denominator. What's on top? You move 120 million in revenue that's currently being spent to host their services so they can make money by 125 companies in the network. You move those under the auspices of this Make Canada Great for the first time. I'm joking. Make Canada Great Again. It's right there. There's a number. We can take that number. We assume zero. All of conductors and all of these products. We assume conductor, all of these 5 products make zero. In all parts of Railtown's world, all of its technology makes zero, which is absurd. We assume that TELUS is not going to put its own customers into its own data center using conductor, which also is absurd. But that's what we're assuming. We assume if I can find it, so long, I've totally messed up this presentation. We assume that the roll-up of 400 million in revenue, or some part of it, we assume zero. We assume zero for everything. We assume zero for growth of that 120 million. We just assume zero for every bloody thing out there. And the only thing we look at is the shared compute revenue generated from the transfer of the current spend. 125 companies in the network currently spend 120 million for hosting services, so then they can sell their product to customers. We just assume that number, 120 million. It's the only number we use. We assume Railtown does absolutely nothing elsewhere, and that revenue doesn't grow. We take 120 million, and again, it doesn't matter when it transfers in total. All that matters is it starts, it works, and an analyst somewhere shows that they'll get it done by October, or they'll get it done by next year. That's all that matters. So it's likely very close to 100% payout. So you take 120 million shared revenue, pick a number. I picked 15%. You know what? If I pick 20%, which I think is equally a good number, they do 24 million a year in revenue. You divide that by 223 million shares, because you know the denominator. That was the only risk. The shorts didn't screw it up. And guess what? Railtown didn't screw it up. You know the denominator. And you know what that is? That gets you to 10.76 cents a share. Call it 10 cents a share. Well, that gets really easy. 10 cents a share. You multiply it by 50x, you got a $5 stock. You multiply it by 25x, you got a $2.50 stock. You multiply it by 10x, you got a $1 stock. Guys, it's right there in front of you. And I'll try to break that down tomorrow so I can show you here, without me having to hold it up, the paper of that presentation. So I think our plan has to be this. I think our plan has to be this. No more recriminations, no more fear, no more second guessing, and no more comparing this to all the other crappy stocks out there. And secondly, just writing off 2025. Blame it on William. 2025 was William's fault. And then we're going to plan that 2026, that's our new time frame. Now, the first time we can actually see revenue in an earnings report is May 15th for 2026. But again, we're not going to have to wait that long. What matters is what the institutions calculate based on research or based on corporate presentations. And that can start happening as soon as they get back from skiing, which my guess is the second week of January. To the extent they need to have a committee meeting up in Canada, it seems like everybody has to have meetings. Paper has to go across every desk. Everybody's got to probably initial it on the top corner somewhere. I'm surprised they don't have multiple passport stamps. But anyway, they get back from vacation the second week of January. Research comes out the third or fourth week of January. They have investment committee meetings. The stock goes to $2. They start buying the stock, and you won't be able to buy any stock. You will not be able to buy any stock. One, you'll be frozen. Two, they'll be buying it all. So what's your power right now to get back at the man? What's your power to get back at the criminal shorts? Where can you direct if you're mad at me, where can you direct that? Buy the stock while the people in Canada are following the rules to not front run news, to not cheat on news, to honor the agreements they sign, to keep their word, to protect their positions and standing and even freedom in Canada. They're not buying. Wall Street, Bay Street doesn't know the story. You do. Do you know it perfectly? No. No, you don't. So we assume zero revenue in all other aspects of the company except for what's disclosed in that presentation. That's not yet revenue. That's what those 125 companies are spending at other hyperscalers. But we also know that TELUS and Railtown are going to share hyperscaling revenue. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious. At 20% revenue share, it's over 10 cents a share in annualized recurring revenue. And how can we be so certain? Because the denominator is not screwed up by the toxic financing and all the criminals on Wall Street, the smiling liars. We know for a certainty what the denominator is, and it's not going to change. Hi, Neil. Happy Sunday, Bill, and entire Railtown team. Neil Gondek, cheap is right. I got even more shares last week. In Canada, 40 to 41. It's amazingly inexpensive. I wish I could borrow 30 grand, but I can't. I'm down to my last shuck with nothing. It's Billy Joe Shaver's song. And I used to know the words. I'd play it for you, but unfortunately they'll block my video. But it's the highway, she's hotter than 9 kinds of hell. The rides, they're as scarce as the rain. When you're down to your last shuck with nothing to sell and too far away from the train. It's been a good month of Sundays and a guitar ago. Had a tall drink of yesterday's wine. Left a long string of friends, some sheets in the wind, and some satisfied women behind. They'd ride me down easy, Lord, ride me on down. Leave word in the dust where I lay. Say I'm easy come, easy go, and easy to love when I stay. Anyway, I'm down to my last shuck, so I'm really proud of each of you who were adding to the positions. I think it's going to be incredible. And rather than, we've already gone through the anxiety, and I think a lot of psychic doubt and second guessing has been directed my way, and we're through it all. I wish I could go back and tell you don't buy it until December, but I can't go back. I can't unring a bell. You can just lay it all on me, but it's not the market per se. It's not the company. It's not the technology. It's not the revenue. It's not the opportunity. It's not AI. This is software development and AI. No, sir. This is your greatest chance. This is your greatest chance to take advantage of what the punishers do to the stock price. And when it turns around, we'll see who's punished. But I'll tell you what, it's not my motive, by the way. My motive is that you guys and girls can make all the red you lost listening to this nightmare the last 3 or 4 years, and then you can make green, green, green. And then once your account is a certain size, you don't have to listen to dime store advice or even Tiffany advice. You can go directly to the wholesalers and originators and get the best advice possible. All right, I'm going to sign off. So we have to pray for peace. The world seems to be, the news anyway, there's a lot of hot spots, and there's some people really being hurt. So we have, remember to pray for peace. I wish each of you peace, and remember to put a little pull on the closest puppy dog you see. Anyway, good night, cheers, and we'll talk tomorrow.